All right, welcome back to another episode of Paladin Financial Talk. I'm your host, Nikki Foley, and I'm with the wonderful Mr. Tony Shore. How are you today?
Nikki, I'm doing great. I've had a great week, and I've just been really busy. For the first time ever, I installed a ceiling fan in one of our rooms, all by my onesie, and it was an experience.
Okay.
Everything went fine except there were complete sections of instructions missing from the instruction manual and no video for this specific fan model that I could find online.
You had an opportunity to work independently there, is what it sounds like.
I had an opportunity to use some words. You know me, I don't swear, but
Yes.
I may have used an expletive or two trying to install the ceiling fan when I realized certain whole steps were missing. Like from this point to this point, they didn't tell you how.
Well, Tony, you know what? I don't think you meant to do this, but you're talking about home improvement, and that's one of my little teasers for today. So I'm really impressed that you were a do-it-yourself man over there.
Yep, I've been doing that more and more, Nikki, for better or worse. But it's an account when you get it done and everything's right. It felt so good, right?
That's what got you through it when you were like using those choice words there.
Yeah, exactly. So what are we? How are you, Nikki?
We're good. Life is busy. We're now into summer. And
Right.
so that is what our topic is on this month is summer spending. I think it's a pretty good one.
Summer spending. So I think that's appropriate, right? I mean, people tend to spend a lot more during the summer, I would say.
I would say it's a little bit of splurge. People are kind of happy and excited, and there's lots of different areas we can choose to
Travel
spend
and- yeah.
extra money. You got it.
Yeah.
So travel, food, I mean, there's all kinds of things. In fact, when I was prepping for our show today, I saw a statistic that approximately the people reported on spent or put aside approximately 21% for additional food during the summer. So they're doing barbecues, they're doing outings,
Yep.
things like that. Maybe they're going out to eat more, patio time. And so 21% increase in what they were setting aside just for food. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
We spend more on food in the summers. It's funny you should mention that. I mean, meat to grill out.
Yeah.
I'm not stopping by the meat market to buy, steaks and things like that to grill during the winter.
Exactly.
And we buy a lot more food and spend a lot more in the summer.
And even though you may choose to be at home, you're still having people over potentially,
Yep.
more expensive cuts of meat, whatever it might be. So that's what we're talking about this month. And quick highlight. So Ellie and her significant other, Nick, bought a boat. So we've already covered
bought
new
a
boats.
boat.
Yes.
Yeah, I talked about that with Ellie. Did you see that?
I have not listened to it yet, so I'm excited. But I know she was excited about her show. And so it's something we've never talked about is buying new boats. But that fits into our summer spending categories.
Well, I told her what our friend Chuck Lucius told me not long after I started working with Gradient Financial. We were talking about expenses and doing things, getting things to do. And he said, Tony, my advice is never buy a boat. You never need to buy a boat. You just need a friend with a boat.
There you go.
That's what Chuck told me. And I go, wait, Chuck, don't you own a boat? And he goes, a couple of them. And I'm like, you're a friend, right? And he goes, nope. You're not using mine. But that was funny. I gave Ellie a hard time, but she's so excited.
Well, they teed me up to go over the fun stuff. They put it in a very broad category, but Matt and Jeff Quick are still to go this month as well. And they're
Sure.
going to do where I said you were teasing the home improvements. There's plenty of home improvements that seem to happen during the
Yes.
summertime, right?
Yep.
And it seems to be expensive. Everything you want to do
It's
outside.
very expensive. We're doing some landscaping, and it's outrageously expensive.
You just want to do flowers, and flowers are expensive. And
They
so
are.
Matt's going to address that side of things. And then those darn kids that we have seem to have more activities, more going on this
They
summer
do.
that we just pull out our checkbooks and credit cards.
Who's
And
going to be
so
talking about kids? Who's that episode?
Quick. Mr. Quick is going to
Jeff
talk about
Quick.
the kicks. Yeah. So we have some of the fun stuff, but also some of the things that are you're presented with. And I don't know if you put them in the fun category or not with home improvement and kids, but they'll cover that one.
Sure.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover some specific actions today. So yes,
Okay.
we're going to weave all this fun stuff like vacations and concerts and so forth through, but it's going to be some specific actions. So should we get started here?
Yeah. Where do you want to start?
So first of all, I have to bring up a topic that it actually took us, I don't want to say it took us by surprise, but we just had our client appreciation event this past Monday. We're sorry we missed you,
Yes.
but we did brewery and ice cream and the whole works. And something that was a recurring topic that we all heard from a few different people, Dave Ramsey. So we are part of the Dave Ramsey Network. And a number of people said how much they appreciated that we were affiliated with that, because there's so many of the topics that are just really good, like financial stability topics, and they found us through that network.
Financial freedom.
You got it. Yeah. And so I'm not going to come up with all the things today on my own. I turned to our friend Dave Ramsey, and I think, you want to hear it from a third party as well. And so we're weaving him through this. So
Yeah, I've met and talked to Dave a couple of times.
okay, tell us more.
Well, I lived in Nashville, and that's where their headquarters are, and he was building a new radio facility for his show, and he was looking for a new producer-director. But Sarah got a job offer here,
Okay.
and I had started to talk to him and his organization there, and I had a few friends that worked there.
Okay.
So with him for his organization.
I don't know that I ever knew that story.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're just going to have some fun today with Dave Ramsey. And if
Yeah, and my wife and I went through his program. They did it at our church. After we moved here, I'm like, oh, yeah, the get out of debt and,
exactly.
a financial freedom class. That's his helping people get out of debt is amazing. I mean, that's his area where he really shines. People may agree or disagree with some of his financial advice, but I'll tell you what, when it comes to helping people find financial freedom, I mean, he's helped tens of thousands of people across the country do that. Yeah.
I couldn't have said it better, Tony. So you did a great job of setting up who Dave Ramsey is. He really is a financial personality, media personality, and his classes that he does through churches and other public places, his radio show, he has books, all kinds of coursework. And so it is really lending to, it's the basics that he is going through and taking some common sense perspective and bringing it to the forefront as we talk about these. So we're going to use a few of those today.
Good.
And we'll talk about financial stability and independence and how that ties back to summer spending. All right, let's do this.
Okay.
So the first one, I'm going to give us 6 different areas that we can concentrate on.
Okay.
And the emphasis really is on being intentional, which that probably doesn't take anybody by surprise. People hate the word budgeting. It makes them feel, constraint, control, they're losing or giving up something, but it's about being intentional about your money. And so being, somewhat forward thinking and planning is another key piece of this as well. And so his approach generally centers on having a zero-based budget, meaning that every dollar is already assigned out to something. And so you're going to see that as I talk about these 6 key points. And so let me summarize those by saying, first, the first one is plan ahead for seasonal spending. So summer being the topic here. Implement a sinking fund. And if that's not terminology that people are aware of, I'm going to go through that here in a moment.
Good.
Being strategic with your purchases, saving on travel and entertainment, reducing household expenses, and then generating extra income.
Yeah, all ways that are going to be very helpful to maintain financial freedom, if not achieve it, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
So just diving into these as we relate to summer spending, we'll plan ahead for seasonal spending. So 3 ways that we're going to look at this. First of all, what's the action that we can take? Why would we do that? Or what's our outcome we're hoping to get? And then what are some of the resources that are available out there? And I'll do that with each one of these topics here. So first of all, saving or creating a separate budget for seasonal spending, like the vacations we've talked about, or the home improvements, or outdoor activities, special events, concerts. You're a concert goer, and I don't know if summer, if it ticks up a little bit for you.
Yeah.
But clearly, by setting aside these or allocating separate funds for these activities, you are preventing overspending. You know what is in that bucket, and you're working within that realm.
Right.
And I think a good way to look at this and some of the tools that you could have, and I think, Tony, you and Sarah may do this, but like the Every Dollar app or some type of app that you tie back to things.
Yep. We have YNAB, or You Need a Budget app, which really works well for us.
Yeah. And so, again, not very far off from where we started with just being intentional and creating that bucket and then using what's in that bucket versus just... who knows? If you don't pay attention, you never know what goes on the credit card and how big or how wide that might get.
Sure.
So the concept of implementing a sinking fund. So the action is anticipate ahead of time for irregular spending during the summertime. And so what the concept is you are taking money and on a, throughout the year and putting it again back into a separate category. And so if you do have overage in some area, you're not putting it on a credit card, you're not, getting behind, but instead you pull from this sinking fund that was there for the purpose of accidental or overspending in a category.
Sure.
And so good way to look at that is, just making sure that that you have maybe a high yield savings account that's set aside for this sinking fund. And again, being intentional of making specific actions to cover for the sinking fund and then using it in case you do go over.
Yeah, what's the so a sinking fund is a lot like having an emergency fund to cover costs.
Yeah, what
right?
a great way to look at that. Exactly. And so it's just for those overages that might happen along the way.
Sure.
Being strategic with your purchases is, this was a concept that I wasn't aware of, and Minnesota doesn't have it. So when we're talking to our local people here, but there are days that states designate as tax-free days. Had you heard of that concept before, Dave Ramsey?
I've participated in it
Okay.
when I lived in Tennessee. Tennessee does that.
Okay.
Tax-free days.
You got it.
Wherever, and then everybody packs into the Cool Springs Galleria to go all to all the shops, and that's when they buy their goods because they don't have to pay taxes on that day as far as sales tax.
Which I had not, being here from Minnesota, they don't do it. So sometimes
Right.
you're not aware, but the whole concept is finding times where you can have a significant savings. And Dave talks about how, your taxes end up adding up. And so being strategic. And so as an example, this isn't perfect, but maybe towards the end of the summer, you're starting to think about your back to school shopping. And so, clearly that can be a big expense for some families. That's when they oftentimes do those tax-free days. Just looking for your savings, being aware that things are going to start to go on sale maybe around 4th of July or the back to school savings, and make sure you make your purchases during that time so you have the opportunity to save 10%, 20%, 30%, whatever it might be. Using sales essentially is the concept there.
And because Minnesota, I don't believe charges sales tax on clothing.
Exactly.
But Tennessee does, so people wait to buy, if they're going to buy a lot of clothes, like back to school clothes or fancy clothes for themselves, get a really nice suit or pair of shoes, they wait.
Yeah, exactly.
for
I
that
know
day.
families that come from out of state to come to the Mall of America right before back to school shopping because they have no sales tax on the clothing. So
Right.
Anyway, again, the action is to use those opportunities when there's a tax savings or there's a
Be strategic. Use sales to your advantage, right?
You got it, exactly. So saving on travel and entertainment, some of what I'm going to say is going to be absolutely no surprise, but there is, in these next two categories that I'm going to go through, there was some lesser known things that I want to bring up to our listeners. But for travel and entertainment, I bet you can find a million things out there on this topic on the internet. But for road trips, clearly purchasing snacks in bulk ahead of time so you're not stopping at the convenience store. This is something that we do. There's not a fight really about it, but when I first met Jeff Foley, he was a quick shop stopper, a convenience store stopper, and he always got a snack. I grew up in a family where we didn't stop at the quick shop or the convenience store, and I blew my mind that Jeff is a very reasonable person and
Fiscally responsible
Yes.
guy, conservative, fiscally responsible person.
Exactly, and he was a convenience store stopper.
Unfortunately, our family is too. We always stop by the convenience stores, and
Okay.
everybody goes in. Everybody comes out with a beverage and a snack, and
So this was one where, differences. And Jeff now, he rarely goes into a convenience store to buy something. And
That's good.
You recognize that can be an area where you overspend or spend money
yeah.
that you absolutely you could have bought it ahead of time at Costco or the grocery store or whatever it might be.
Yeah, do you want to pay $2.50 or $3 for a can of soda or pop, or do you want to pay 68 cents and buy it in bulk, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, avoiding some of those overpriced stops along the way. Another example, we're getting ready to go on a road trip, and somebody gave me tips along the way. Everybody has tips, but
Sure.
we're going to Mackinac Island. Well,
Oh,
they
nice.
said,
Nice.
So they said, we're only going to be there one night because it's
Sure.
on our way to somewhere else. But they said, don't stay on the island. stay across and then just take the ferry over, you're going to pay half or a third. And I know some of the joy is staying on the island, but it just worked out. I wasn't sure we're going to make the ferry anyway for the last ferry over in the evening. And so we're paying a quarter of what we would have paid on the island. And so you have to just pick and choose what's important to you. But that was an area where it was easy for us to save a little bit since it's just a one overnight stop for us.
I've heard that tip too. Sarah and I have been thinking about going to Mackinac Island. Same thing. People are like, don't stay on the island. Saying, although there's really, there's not and there's limited places to stay on the island, of course. So it's a high dollar value there. But there's some great places to stay right across, and you just take the ferry, and it's like you said, a quarter of the price.
Yeah. And where, maybe if that's where we were going and we're going to be the whole, a longer duration, we might make a different choice. But for this one, it was right for us on that one. Another one is just opting to stay at state parks or local attractions that can be lower cost than others, and just being like maybe in comparison to a theme park or something like that. There's so many things to just get outdoors and do, and you just have to be somewhat strategic and a little research on what that might look like. So no surprise when what I say, is potentially an Airbnb could be more cost effective than something else, using a kayak or an Orbitz or one of those sites where you can find a good deal. And so lots of resources in that category, and you can Google and find so many things out there on your own there. But just another piece is reducing household expenses during the summertime. Tony, I don't know what your house looked like, but I grew up in a family as we did not turn that air conditioner on until the very last minute when nobody could stand it anymore. Again, I don't know what you look like, but you asked Matt about that one, and he still cringes when the air conditioner is not on and we walk in our parents' house.
Oh, yeah. We're kind of the same way, but our parents were that way. We're not.
Okay.
So anytime we go over to my mother-in-law's house or my parents' house, it's hotter than Hades, as I like to say. It's so warm compared to our house. And I'm like,
got it.
The AC's off.
So Matt and I were home last weekend, and my dad didn't have the air conditioner on yet. And Matt he had to do a little negotiating to see if we could get that air conditioner turned on. So
that's so funny.
Point in that, though, clearly lower utility bills come along with not turning that air conditioner on until later. But closing blinds and curtains, I remember my grandparents in the afternoon, those blinds would go down and we would reduce.
We do that.
Yeah?
We do that in our house. Yeah.
And the automatic thermometers or like the digital
thermostats.
Thermostats. I couldn't think what I was trying to say there. Same concept of, making sure you're using things like that. But the other one is, and I hadn't thought about this until, again, my friend Dave Ramsey here, removing your gym membership during the summer, because you can do so many things outside.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, think about that savings, especially if you're a family. You could save easily $1,000, and where could you reallocate those funds to? So that was a big one for me. Another thing
That's
that
smart.
Was lesser known to me until our son was, just came out of fourth grade. Fourth grade has a lot of benefits. The National Park Service does a free entry for fourth graders at their parks, and I believe it's the whole car load with that. They do a ski pass that's free for fourth graders. And so if you just do a little bit of research out there, there's tons of things that you can do. And the everykidoutdoors.gov is a website that our government puts out, and things that we can do with the kids. So
well, you know what my son and his wife figured out? They like to go to parks, national state parks, a lot of state parks, and go camping. And when they came up to renew their license for their vehicle, they thought, those new Minnesota black license plates look really cool.
Yeah.
Oh, well, then they found out I forget how much more. I don't know, $35 or something extra. And we don't need to spend the money on that. But then they found out that if you got the state park license plate, it was, I forget how much more, like, I don't know, $35, $40 or $50. Then you get into all the state parks for free and don't have to buy the state park pass. And they figured out, wow, we're going to save a lot of money if we buy the nice state park license. It's a lot cheaper than if you visit the state parks enough, you're going to save a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many things out there that it does take just a little bit of time, but again, makes complete sense for them. And I would say just in kind of wrapping this up, our final point was generate extra income. And this is something that we've been doing in our house, but decluttering and selling things.
Yes.
I'm not very good at selling things. I've gotten pretty good at decluttering here, but taking advantage of resources like Facebook Marketplace and some of the things that are out there that make it so easy to sell things these days.
Yeah, I'm really into decluttering and I'm good at selling things. I
Okay.
sell things on eBay and I've done it for my parents when they moved, hey, can you sell this? Yeah. And they had some things that were worth, some good money. And we do too. I'm getting better and better about doing it. You just have to discipline yourself to just do it. It's just time consuming. I do have to fight my wife and my daughters on getting rid of things.
Okay.
That's hard for some people. To get rid of things, but you'll feel so much better when you declutter. You feel better, and a little extra money from selling things is pretty good.
Yeah, and you think about it as you're maybe somebody else here that's listening is in the same position as you, that it's hard to convince the wife or the daughter to get rid of things. But if you think about what's the incentive, well, we get to go on vacation, we get to use that money on a concert or something like that. It gets a little bit, the motivation changes a little bit there.
Right.
So that's a great one. And so, like I said, there's some Facebook groups out there. I think it's Buy Nothing, something that you basically exchange free things. So somebody's getting rid of something, then you can get it for free. I mean, take advantage of things like
There's
that.
a ton of local Facebook groups for buying, selling, trading free on Facebook Marketplace. So there's a lot of things you can do, get rid of on Facebook or sell.
Yeah. So thinking about all the things that we've talked about, how can you keep money in your pocket or put more money in your pocket along the way? And so these were our 6 items today. And just for a quick recap of what those were is planning ahead for seasonal spending, implementing sinking funds, being strategic with your purchases, saving on travel and entertainment, reducing household expenses, and generating extra income. So, again, more to come from our
Matt and
episodes.
Jeff,
You got it.
they're going to talk about the summer requirements, to cover home projects and kids' activities, which ties in.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we hope you learned something today. Certainly, I don't know if our listeners and those that are listening to us today, if they realize, but we put out new episodes every single week. We have not missed a week this year. We've done no reruns up to this point.
It's been amazing.
And so we really are working hard to get new content out there and making sure that we're educating those that are listening.
Yeah.
And each show comes live at the beginning of the week. So we usually release it on Saturday mornings, but definitely up by Tuesdays each week. No repeats. And then you can find us on all of our social media platforms if you're looking for additional education.
Yep.
With that, Tony, anything else that you want to add to our topic today?
No, just search for Paladin Financial or go to paladinfinancial.com. Is that your website?
You got it.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And go to the show page, and there's links to all the podcast sites and to YouTube. So we encourage people to listen to the show. You can look at the topics and go, oh, I want to hear about that, and listen to past shows. So
exactly.
I think that's great. No, just once again, let people know, what's the phone number if somebody's listening and they want to get a financial plan in place? How can they get a hold of the Paladin Financial team?
Yeah, absolutely. Call us at 651-842-8406. We also added a new online booking feature to our website.
Nice.
So when Tony had said the website there earlier, it's paladinfinancial.com, or again, 651-842-8406.
All right, sounds great. And that does it for today's episode of Paladin Financial Talk with our host, Nikki Foley.
All right, thanks, Tony.